Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. And as they say in sports, 2 down, 1 to go. That's 2 preseason games down, 1 preseason game to go. That will be Eagles against the Colts, and that will be Thursday night. First, they have a Tuesday joint practice, and hopefully everything goes well and they're able to do that. And we've got a lot to talk about, Adam, with the roster is starting to shape or round into form, I would say, shape into form. We're getting more clarity on positions and position groups. And I'll say this has been a very strange preseason, just from, watching 2 Eagles leave the game on a stretcher. And then obviously you saw what happened with the Patriots the other night. And I get that the NFL is taking extra urgent care, right, on field, especially after DeMar Hamlin, and they should. But it's made it more almost harrowing at times watching these guys have to leave, and just hoping that you see them throw a hand up or a finger up and say they're all right.
Yeah, this is their protocol. If it looks like it's a neck injury, the player's going to go on the stretcher. That's the protocol, which has been in place for years. And then this one was scary. And then give Bill Belichick credit. He and Matt LaFleur made this decision, and Bill was very upfront. The Patriot players talked about they felt like they could not go on.
Yeah.
So what happened was they also canceled the joint practices in Nashville for Tuesday and Wednesday. So the Patriots will practice this week at home, and they'll travel Thursday for the game Friday in Nashville. But look, the player care is more important. As you mentioned, we saw 2 players get stretchered off. In the last game, we'll talk about one of them's one's already on injured reserve, and the other one's got a concussion or JOMO. So thankfully, that's all it is. But it's brain injury, concussion. Right. We're concerned about that. But again, the protocol is the same. It's been like that for years, and you got to be careful.
Yeah, no doubt. Thankfully, Tyree Cleveland and Moro Ajomo are okay. And we will talk about them. A lot of injuries from that game also to some important players to talk about. And just like I mentioned, the roster, as you and I discuss this a lot, almost every day, starting to, in our minds, round into form. And obviously the intel that we have is going to help that as well. And we'll share that on this podcast. We're also sharing a lot more on our Patreon channel. We're going to do 2 live streams this month because of the cut down day. It sort of begs an extra live stream chat with our members. And we really appreciate our members. We've had a couple more jump aboard in the last few days, so we really appreciate them. And anybody else should get in. It's patreon.com/insidethebirds. And we haven't even made yet our announcement of the extra programming that we're going to be adding for our Patreon members this upcoming season. And when we do, it's going to knock your socks off. So I'm just looking forward to that. And then also looking forward to knocking the socks off of the masses, because we've got extra programming, a lot of good shows. We just can't announce everything yet. As we get closer to the season, I promise you we'll let you know when the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. It's going to be really exciting, though.
We've got my chat this Thursday. During the game, we did this last week. It was a good turnout for the Eagles-Browns preseason. We did a chat, and we're going to do it again with the Eagles-Colts this week at 8 p.m. Eastern. Maybe if the game's halfway decent, I won't bail after half an hour, because I'm only do a half an hour anyway. But sometimes I stay later if it's going well.
Yeah.
And this game was so bad, as everybody knows, it was awful.
Yes.
So the hope is that this one be a little more exciting. Hey, look, Richardson's the quarter. Hopefully he plays. Now I get it that they're practicing tomorrow, so who knows? And you and I will be there for this practice. And obviously, I'll give you some notes in the chat Thursday. I'll have some extra stuff for you there. And don't forget, folks, if you're new, and I know we've got a lot of new subscribers, we got Darren and we got Philip from overseas, but we can't tell which, unless you leave us a message, we can't see exactly where you're from. But so we've got the Chuck Pagano interview, which we did, and that was exclusively for us, on Sean Desai. He gave great intel on what the defense should look like and his background on Sean. John DeFilippo also worked with Deshaun. He's known him for they go back to Boston College together.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about the Fangio scheme, what it's like to play against it, what it makes you do. It's just really great to hear a guy who managed Desai and Pagano, and a guy who worked along Desai and saw his offense in practice. Pretty darn good. That was really cool. And Joe Banner, the Eagles former president, came on with us recently also in August to break down so many issues and Eagles roster, what's going on with the Eagles and analytics and it was one of our favorite interviews we've ever done with Banner. We're still, by the way, going to have another personnel person on next week, so stay tuned for that.
There you go. All right, looking forward to that. Reminder, Inside the Birds is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. I've been there a couple of times this summer. It's a palace. It's an amazing place, and the summer's not over yet. So I would recommend everybody. Good concerts there, by the way. Check them out. Go to the website, find them. It's a really great place. All right. Let's get through the injuries because there were a couple in the game that we talked about. There have been a couple since the game or coming out of the game. Bigger ones, obviously, Adam, Trey Sermon, who had overcame a fumble and then wound up having a nice second half for the Eagles, been out with an ankle injury there. And then what continues to be an issue for the Eagles is both Quez Watkins and Britton Covey have been out with hamstring injuries. Greg Ward with the shoulder. But let's just, before we get into the others, talk about the hamstring injury to Britton Covey is really hurting him. I mean,
yeah, so
there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we'll start with Covey, then we'll work our way back and explain Sermon and Greg Ward and Watkins. So Covey was working on the side, and I was at Sonny's practice. He was working on the side, so he theoretically should be close. Watkins, I've not seen it all work at all. I mean, I know he's rehabbing, but I haven't seen him work. Greg Ward came out of the game with a shoulder injury, I believe. Trey Sermon certainly did. Those are the offensive injuries. But look, this does not help Britton Covey make the team. He would be their fifth receiver. You and I talked off the air about this. We don't think they're going to keep six.
Yeah.
Covey would be the five. See, the thing that, and this always goes with, you can't just keep a guy for special teams. And we'll get into some thoughts on that. We've run some things around people in the league on how they view fourth round picks, fifth, sixth, seventh, and undrafted free agents. You can't just be a special teams player. You got to be more than that. Unless you're Sean Bradley, that was acceptable because they knew that when they drafted him, that's probably all he would do. That's all he really did.
Yeah.
But with Covey, they thought he was a dynamic slot potentially, and he's got great interior quickness. Fortunately, he couldn't do that in camp because he's been hurt. And he showed in the second half, once they blocked better for him, he's a much better punt returner. Well, he can't help the club in the top. He's not been on the field in nearly 3 weeks. This is not good. But obviously, it's the third receiver. He won that job before he got hurt. I don't see anything changing here. He needs to get on the field. They need to get him back and get their timing back before the season starts. So you worry about that. And Sermon, I think you and I would agree. We don't see him making the team. They're not going to keep 5 backs. But here's a guy who's subject to waivers. If he doesn't make the team, he's subject to waivers. If he doesn't get claimed, he would go to the practice squad. Sure. We know the head coach can't stop talking about him. But he got hurt. He did have a fumble. He rebounded very well with that nice touchdown run. He's a guy that you'd love to have in the practice squad, but it would be nice if he can get back this week. But he did not practice on Saturday or Sunday. He was in a jersey and shorts.
There you go. All right. So we also have some injuries on defense as well, starting with and as I understand this with Fletcher Cox, kind of sore knee. I think if he were 25 years old and maybe they would not, have him sidelined. Who knows? I don't know how the extent of his soreness, but obviously whenever Fletcher Cox's knee is sore, he ain't getting on the field. That's just how they're going to do.
Yeah, he did some light work on Sunday, but and we're going to get into when we get to our breakdowns of the position battles and rotations. We're going to detail what they did over the last week with their D tackle rotation. It's fascinating. Definitely did some different stuff lately. Moro Joma's out with a concussion. Son Reddick with his thumb surgery till week 1. They still expect him to play week 1 against New England. Nolan Smith has not practiced since he got hurt in the game. It looked ugly. He downplayed it, but he hasn't practiced yet with a shoulder. We don't know when he's going to practice.
It is the same shoulder that I believe at Georgia. Yeah. Didn't he have a pec shoulder thing last year at Georgia? I thought he missed a couple of games for that. Yeah.
Okay. Not sure. Kyron Johnson has an appendectomy, but we'll keep an eye on that shoulder injury with Nolan Smith. Certainly down Reddick, you'd like him to get the reps. Kai Gardner did work some on Sunday. I saw him work on 7-on-7. Don't think he did team, but they list him as limited with an ankle. The good news is they got 2 guys back. In fact, one guy didn't miss any time, although it looked like he might. Josh Andrews did not miss any time. He practiced Saturday and Sunday, so he's good to go as their backup center. Patrick Johnson, as he told you a couple weeks ago, was a low ankle sprain. He wouldn't miss. It was not a day-to-day situation, but it wasn't week to week. He's back. He worked Saturday and Sunday. He's good to go. He He was with the second team defense. He did specials, which is going to help him make the team. In addition to being a backup outside linebacker, we'll see what happens with him. So that's good news on the injury front. But the big ones were obvious. Zach McPherson tore his Achilles. He's out for the season. He went on IR Saturday. Well, he actually went on IR Sunday, technically. He and Tyree Cleveland and Noah Ellis, 3 of them were waived injured. They all passed the waivers unclaimed. They're all in injured reserve. So theoretically, they're out for the season, but the Eagles, if they want, could reach an injury settlement with them. And they could go to another team once they're healthy enough, but they could, when you do a settlement with your current team, you can't come back for a specified agreement in terms of weeks between the agent and the doctor.
Right.
It's typically 6 to 8 weeks, but McPherson won't be back. He's got an Achilles. We wish the best for Tyree Cleveland, who has a neck and concussion, and then Noah Ellis, who had an unspecified injury. He's a guy I know that they liked on the practice squad, so I certainly could see him.
Yes.
Cutting him, reaching a settlement later in the season, going to the practice.
Yeah, I would see that as well, and I echo that sentiment. They were pleased with Noah Ellis's progress. To get back to Nolan Smith, he did miss in November last year. I think it finished off his year. He had a torn pec.
Oh, he talked about that.
Yeah.
He actually talked about that. I believe the media, I wasn't sure what he was referring to. Now that makes sense with what you said, because he had the pectoral injury, and you're always worried about that. Yeah, and boy, when he jerked that shoulder, when he went, they didn't call it a horse collar. He grabbed the inside of the jersey, but he didn't pull it.
Right.
But you saw him hold his arm, like, oh boy, but thank goodness it's not serious. But you and I should be there on Tuesday or tomorrow, so we'll look for that. And also, we should mention Ty Zentner. No surprise, was waived. He clearly had no chance. He struggled. And Sipos, look, before the high ankle injury, and it was a pretty severe one last year, he was actually punting decently. But the question for him now is, do they bring in someone to compete against him?
Right. And I think with these injuries, like Zach McPherson included, right? Zach McPherson, that people have made some kind of assumptions. Oh, they were going to keep this, or this is. Just remember, we're going to hit this 100 times. There's the initial 53, and then there's the real 53. And you're not just competing against someone on your team at camp, like Tyler Zentner and Aaron Sipos were competing against each other. But now Aaron Sipos still has competition. It's who else is out there that the Eagles might think could do a better job than he is. So he is not out of the clear. And I sort of look forward to, in this podcast, getting into the cornerback situation and discussing how, I don't know if it was a sure thing that so-and-so and so-and-so would have definitely made the team, because you can only keep so many numbers.
Yeah.
And there are certain rights and privileges afforded to certain draft picks as well. So we'll get into that as well in this pod. You mentioned Greedy Williams, right?
Yeah. Actually, I did. We were on the wave. We were going to get to that right now.
Sure,
so they
go ahead.
waived Zentner and they released Greedy Williams.
Disappointing, Greedy Williams. I mean,
good. By the way, you nailed that one in our not too early. When did we do that? Not too early 53.
I think it was it was about 3 weeks after the draft, probably.
Wow, you put Greedy Williams off the team. Why do you say that?
So we were doing numbers, right? I specifically said, you got to do numbers here. And I was going to wait till we get to corner, because we're going to wind up talking about this again. But you have to assume that, we know the top 3 are locks, right? We know there's Slay, we know it's Bradbury, and we know it's Maddox, right? I mean, at least we're
and Josh Job's a lock.
Right. And then I didn't know Job was a lock at the time. Remember this?
Now he's a lock. Yeah.
But now he is. But then I thought, all right, you got those 3. Keely Ringo is a 4th round pick. They just don't cut 4th round picks. So no matter how bad he is, or I didn't think he was going to be bad. I'm just saying, in my mind, I knew he was definitely 4. Last year, the Eagles kept 5 corners. It's really hard to keep 6 unless you're playing some exotic dimes, right? So I really felt that there was only one spot up for grabs after those 4, and it was going to be between Job, Greedy Williams, and whoever else they brought in, like the Eli Ricks, and then I just knew Job was on the team last year. He played well, and I just said, I don't think it's going to be an automatic for Greedy. I think Job is going to give him a good shot, and I went with Job.
To say I don't want to say underachieved. To say he didn't perform would be an understatement. He was poor. We know for a fact he did not play well, perform well, whatever you want to call it in practice. And man, to not even make it to next Tuesday,
as someone, as you're echoing here, I'm going to echo the same sentiment. I think people are surprised that he was as kind of like not ready to seize the moment as he, because this is not an undrafted rookie. This is a guy who's been in the league for a couple of
Former
years.
second rounder.
Yeah, a former second rounder. Now maybe overdrafted on traits, but still has been in NFL locker room for 3 years. And the way it was described to me, Adam, is that it was like he was just not ready for that moment. He didn't show up. And that was, it's not like this is a battle he lost to Josh Jobe because Jobe was just a lot better. Jobe's been good. It's just that he really underperformed, and that was surprising.
Yeah, he was with the Browns obviously for the first 4 years of his career, and boy, he'll be with someone now. Luckily, the Eagles gave him very little money back there. They did all their contracts like this. Every single free agent, just about before training camp was signed, got either 500, 600,000 fully guaranteed at signing, unless you were Nick Morrow, got nothing guaranteed. But Greedy Williams got 600 fully guaranteed at signing. 500 of it was his base salary. 1.08 million, 500 grand was fully guaranteed at signing. The Eagles do owe him, no matter what, the 100 grand of a signing bonus, but they'll get a cap rebate when somebody signs him. Someone will sign him.
Yeah.
And that 500 grand comes off their books. But man, talk about a height, weight, speed guy who never lived up to it. Boy, and he was hurt a lot, and the Browns had no interest in bringing him back. I understand it's not a lot of money. That's not the point. The point is they really wanted him to be that veteran outside backup, which is important because you got 2 30-yard corners.
Right.
And now that they have no experience behind the 2 starters. That's not good.
Definitely. All right. So, I mean, at least you start to get a clearer picture of how this thing is shaping up now, a corner, now that Zach McPherson's out for the year, and now that Greedy Williams has been waived. Released. My fault. Released. Yeah. So there are some newer guys who were brought in a big wave of signings. Now, obviously, before we get to these names, Adam, the Eagles have to play a preseason game in a couple of days, right? They have just put a bunch of guys who are not on the injured reserve, but there are a couple on injured reserve. A couple of guys are just not going to be able to play because of injuries, and so this is what you call the camp body or the game body. You got to get guys in there to fill up space in a preseason game. The one that really jumps out is obviously the return of Big Marv, defensive tackle Marvin Wilson, and some other guys who were. I got to be honest with you, some of them I had never heard of before.
Well, here's on your point. They could not line up today. So with Cox dealing with a minor knee injury, you're not going to play him with that. Ojoma's out with concussion. The only healthy D tackles they have who were on the roster previously were Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, and Marlon Tuipulotu. So yeah, they had to. You nailed it. They had to sign a couple guys, and they actually signed 3. Caleb Sanders from South Dakota State is really small, like really small. He's under 290. I'm told from someone in scouting around the National Football League. He said he's super small. He said he was kind of surprised Philly signed him, and he goes, "You know what? They must have injuries." I was like, "Yes, you're right. That's why." And then Robert Cooper is a nose tackle with Seattle and their offseason program, and in training camp he was waived recently out of Florida State. He's an undrafted free agent as well. And old friend Marvin Wilson is back.
I'm going to call Robert Cooper Bobby C. Just my good buddy Bobby. I used to have a friend named Bobby C. So we're going to call him Bobby C.
Okay.
Yeah, Marvin Wilson back. Tyreek Maddox Williams, the inside linebacker.
Oh, I'm sorry. Olave Sagapolu, who they signed about a week and a half ago. I'm sorry. He would be the 4th D tackle, but because of the heat, and you need to have 5 guys in a preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, if Cox isn't playing, would you really play Jordan Davis? I mean, do you really? Because we don't know yet. Considering the game that they're practicing Tuesday, why would they play the starters?
Right.
You could use them. Typically, you don't play the starters. You practice them in the joint practice. Although it'll have to be a light one. It's 2 days before the game. But nevertheless, why would you play them? So yeah, they had a numbers issue. And this guy I know, Quentin Bell. They signed an outside linebacker. And
one of the only names I could remember.
Well, the comical thing is he's wearing 74.
Nice.
What? Does he have to wear a defensive tackle or offensive tackle? So Quentin Bell, I remember with the Raiders in training camp many years ago. He was a 7th rounder in 2019. And he's now with his 4th team in 4 years. And he's sort of got some measurables. He's a small school guy, but like you said, just you throw him out there in preseason. From Prairie View A&M, by the way.
Oh, good old Prairie View in Texas. Yeah.
Correct. So they brought him in. Tyreek Maddox-Williams, for you Rutgers fans, they brought him in as an inside linebacker. Now, remember, we should mention, we forgot to mention, this was on our list to talk about. Miles Jack retired. He went on reserve.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Reserve retired. He went on that list on Sunday. Boy, they didn't waste any time. They put him on that list, which means they were able to fill his spot. So Tyreek Maddox-Williams was an undrafted free agent out of Rutgers last year. Although he's older, he's 25. He was an older undrafted free agent.
Mm-hmm.
He was with the Chargers last season. The Chargers cut him in July. So he is now here. You figured he'll just be one of those preseason game bodies. It is what it is. And man, what a lot of moves. Holy smokes.
Yeah, listen, go back a couple of weeks to Inside the Birds when they made those linebacker additions. And what we said was that they weren't messing around. They were getting some veterans in. And we told you that Zach Cunningham, well, from what we were hearing, was the guy that you really got to watch for to make some hay here and potentially start alongside Nakobe Dean, which I think will happen when they're in their base formations and run formations. He's 6'3". His range against the run is good. Obviously, neither of these guys covered. But as you pointed out, and I followed up with the following podcast, we both sources were telling us about Miles Jack that there were some real questions about the knees and whether they were going to hold up. And Miles himself was talking about like 1 foot in the door for trade school. Like it always felt, even the way he described kind of being at home playing video games and all of a sudden getting a call, that maybe he kind of saw the writing on the wall even as he signed here. The Eagles did the right thing. They brought him in and they gave him the first team reps first. I mean, he's Miles Jack. He had the pedigree. He's been something in this league. But you saw it by the last game. Cunningham was running with the ones, right? And
actually,
Miles,
I was going to say, sorry, a week and a half ago, Zach Cunningham was over Miles Jack. It was obvious. Right. And so go ahead.
Jack was playing in the fourth quarter of that game a couple nights ago in the second preseason game. So you had already seen that what we had told everybody was that Zach Cunningham, give him a week, give him some practices, let him get out. He's going to wind up rising up the depth chart. And he did.
Yeah. The only question with Zach Cunningham was from a health standpoint. Yes, we did say when they signed, we expect Cunningham to be the guy who beats out Jack, to probably start next to Nakobe Dean, which looks like it's going to happen because Nick Marr's been running with the twos mostly. He's got a little smattering of first team reps, but the only thing with that is it's not like you can't throw on first or second down. They'll target. Now we'll see how much they do it, but they'll target Cunningham in the pass game. Like you'll get I know Zach, you're right. He's tall, he's long, you love that. He's a great run stopper, tough guy. Boy, for a while there, he was one of the better 34 inside linebackers in the National Football League. Obviously, this is a good fit for him. He's played this. Not the Fangio, but he's played in this type of defense. So that's a good one here. Now, the question would be, to start the season, okay, we believe it's going to be Dean and Cunningham. We think Ellis will make it. Morrow should be the fourth. That's probably. Do you see them keeping 5?
No. In fact, I almost tinkered with the idea, do they just keep 3 and just have a guy on the practice squad? But I think that's a little risky. We'll talk about why they might want to do that later in this in a few minutes when we get to defense. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Dean, Cunningham, Ellis, and Morrow in some form or fashion. So, yeah, I think they'll wind up keeping 4. Too risky to just keep 3, even at a position that they don't value as much. So why don't we transition now to talking about some of these position battles on offense and defense. First, we're going to remind you that it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer, and they can't wait to celebrate with you. So join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get on the fun next time you visit. All right, so let's talk about offense, and we'll start with the most important position. And I think we've got to, I was getting the tweets and the reactions from people like after the first reception or the first pass completion. This whole idea of Marcus Mariota struggling, true. Tanner McKee impressing, true.
In
games, yes. Tanner McKee pushing Marcus Mariota for the number 2 spot. Not true.
Yeah, they shot this down. I get it. Mariota's really not playing well. It's not just practice, it's in games. You all saw it in the games. He's been wildly inconsistent in practice. Now, the only good thing I'd say about his last week in practice, you definitely see sometimes where you go, wow, that's a really good throw. And then for the life of me, he sails balls when a guy's wide open. I mean, this isn't just off by a foot. This could be off by 10 yards. I don't think it's a timing thing.
I'm only laughing as you're spit because I'm like, you remember when they signed him and I said I watched
Oh, I
Falcons
know.
game last year and it was
Crushed
surprising to me how
You're right.
badly he overthrew guys that were wide open.
That's why, by the way, that's why, people like Kyle Pitts and fantasy, Pitts had the meniscus injury.
Yeah.
He was wide ass open. He just wanted to get in the football because Mariota would struggle. He just couldn't get him the ball.
Yeah. And there were times, I mean, that offensive line's not bad in Atlanta. It's got some decent
They've
players.
got a bunch of high round picks, but as I said before, his wheels are great. He's healthy. And this is where Alex Tanney is a young quarterbacks coach. He's only been coaching for 3 years. He's got to figure out a way to get his mechanics better. I like that McKee has at least shown, well, he's been pretty good in the games, 2 games. Just to get a lot of practice reps.
Right.
And I know they get the developmental period after practice is over, which is really probably where he's getting the reps. That's great, and whoever he works with. But Mariota's got to be better because he's one injury away from playing. And based on Hurts's injury history, first years as a starter, probably going to have to play. And this is just not acceptable. This inaccuracy with this, they're so good on offense from a talent standpoint. They're arguably NFL's best offense.
Right.
And you need to be better. Mariota did not play well last year. I don't know. I don't know what you can do other than, like the coaches said, they're going to keep working with him, but they got to get the footwork better, mechanics better, arm slot better. He's just not throwing the ball well.
Yeah, and someone reached out to us, Adam, I think on our Inside the Birds Twitter, and said, well, why is it not a discussion if the number 3 quarterback is clearly outperforming the number 2 quarterback? And the answer to that, I say, is because there's a whole lot of context you're missing in that conversation. The number 3 quarterback is performing well in games against guys who are going to be cut mostly, in the following week or two. 2s and 3s, right. And then the number 3 quarterback's a rookie who's never ever played in the NFL game. The Eagles are a franchise that believes so much in the backup quarterback, value of a backup quarterback, that's why they picked Jalen Hurts there. Obviously Nick Foles led them to a Super Bowl. They want someone who they know can come in and win games for them. And if they don't believe Marcus Mariota is that guy, they're not going to hand those keys to Tanner McKee and say, you are that guy. What they're going to do, and this goes back to the case of, you're not always competing against your teammates. You're competing against what's out there. If there was somebody out there that they felt would be better than Marcus, because they maybe came to the decision that Marcus is just cooked, then they'll make that move. But they're not just going to go to Tanner McKee. And by the way, they're going to be, I would assume, very patient also with Marcus Mariota here.
Yeah. You wouldn't as a coaching standpoint, you're not going to put this kid McKee. Let's say, okay, we'll extrapolate this. Let's say that it's week 8, Mariota fills in for Hurts for 2 games. He's really doing badly. You're not going to put your season on the line with the 3rd string quarterback. But we don't even know if he'll make the team. And he obviously, because he's got good tape out there, he's a quarterback. The Eagles have to think long and hard about whether they're going to waive him or not, try to get him to the practice squad. That's risky when it's a quarterback. And he has some, like a 5th corner who puts good tape together, he might clear waivers, but this kid's look good in the preseason, and he's a guy you'd love to develop. Maybe he's the future too. Sure, he could be, but not now. That's not the way it works.
Right.
But the problem that you have is, because you talked about it, if he looks cooked, if he's got to play, other than Joe Flacco, they don't seem to be interested in. I don't know what they would do. I mean, I know there'll be some guys cut next Tuesday, but man, they got to get him righted, and the time is running out.
Yeah, it is. It's running out, and yet still there's like 3 weeks before a game is played, a real game is played, and he may not have to play in that game. So, I mean, he only has to play if Jalen Hurts is hurt. So we'll if anything pops up on the radar, we'll let you know. But right now they're going to give Marcus Mariota every chance to get things right. And he has improved since he was really, really not good in the first week or so of camp. I think that I mentioned this last pod. I think having a natural center or close to it like Josh Andrews has helped him. You've seen him complete the ball better now than the first 2 weeks, but he's got to stop the interceptions. And as you mentioned, and I don't know if he can do this, but I mean, he just has to improve that accuracy on wide open targets.
Yeah, you just hit on it. The guy's wide ass open, and he throws it over the guy's head. It doesn't seem to me to be a timing issue. You mentioned Josh Andrews being there, and certainly he's hit. Now, I'll say this about Mariota. He's made some really good throws.
Yeah.
You go, wow, okay, the arm strength is back, the legs are back, but then why is the ball sailing?
Yeah. No,
That's concerning.
It is concerning. All right, so let's move off the quarterbacks. I wrote more about, if you want more of an understanding and more context, I wrote a story on InsideTheBirds.com. It's titled Back It Up. It's sort of my way of saying, hold up, pump the brakes, back it up on Tanner McKee as going into the year as the backup quarterback, with a detailed explanation why on InsideTheBirds.com. All right, Adam, running back, a different situation here where you don't know who's 1, 2, 3, whatever, but it's all because they're all pretty good players here. And so this is a really good problem for the Eagles figuring this out.
It's starting to get clear. Gainwell clearly is, we call this situational backfield. It definitely is.
Yes.
Gainwell is your 4-minute back or 2-minute back. Could be their main goal line back. As crazy as it sounds, but again, he's incredible at conversion.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't have juice with Penny or Swift. You know, when you go to practice, you don't see Swift or Penny getting a lot of reps. I get it. Got injury history. Got to be careful. Swift, I saw him with the ones at 7-on-7. I've seen him with ones with 11-on-11s, but Gainwell seems to get the most snaps of all the running backs. That could be purposeful because Swift and Penny's injury history. And then you see Boston Scott gets reps. Yeah, he gets his reps. Now, the thing we don't know, and this is the big thing, is, okay, who's the main ball carrier? That's where it gets interesting, because Gainwell doesn't have the juice of Penny or Swift, and Penny, you got to be careful. It's just Swift you got to be careful with, because he's a bounce it out side runner. Gainwell's an inside runner, and Penny's a home run hitter. That's where you get the committee going. Yeah. But Gainwell clearly has a role. He is their clear situational 2-minute back, 4-minute back, and goal line guy. He's got that. He's got it. I mean, he's going to be that main guy right now.
Do you get the sense that after each game, you know, throughout the year, we're going to be talking about a different running back leading the team in touches each game? From obviously, there's only 4, right? I'm not saying 17 different guys, but I'm just saying, like, week 1 might be different than week 2. Week 2 might be, you know.
I would say 1 probably should be Gainwell, based on what we've seen throughout the entire training camp. But the reality is, Swift and Penny are just more explosive. It's about making explosive plays and defensively not giving them up. With their ability to throw the ball down the field, it's incredible, right? Hurts is so good with Smith and Brown and obviously Goddard as a vertical tight end. But they need to get the vertical game in the pass game with the running backs. And Swift is just better at it, way better, more explosive than Gainwell is.
Right.
Just right. Gainwell's, who the hell knew this is going to be the case? He'd be like this great run. As fantasypoints.com said in their metrics, he's the best short yardage back in the NFL of all people. I mean, it's crazy, but that's not why they drafted him. They drafted to be explosive back, and we haven't seen that back. So they've got Swift to do that. So it could work. It could work situationally. And you said it. They've got 3 weeks left. We'll see what happens.
We will, and I think it's going to be. I do think that after each game, we're going to be like, hey, this guy only had 7 touches, but he wound up having 110 yards. And a touchdown.
I know. Yeah. Penny's that guy.
Yeah, or like Swift could catch the ball like that.
Swift,
you know,
killed the Eagles. What did he kill them in week 1?
Yeah, he did. Oh my God, the 55-yard run, the 40-yard catch. Oh, it was crazy.
Gainwell, look, you know, for those of you who've been with for a while, we pushed and predicted myself for the Eagles to draft Gainwell. Well, I thought he'd be used as a specific way. It's been a 180 on his usage. Totally different from the way he played at Memphis. Who the hell knew? But you know what? Seriously. I give the coaches credit. At least they found something he's really good at. He's a burrower. You know, he gets low and he gets through there. He gets super low and he's good at that. But they need some juice in that run game.
All right, let's talk real quick. We'll get into offensive line, a little bit wide receiver before we move to defense. First, I want to pause real quick to hear a word from some great sponsors. All right, Adam, as we talk about the offensive line, it's pretty clear there's no questions as a starting offensive line. We know right now Cam Jurgens is your starting right guard, and that was really the only question about the starters going in. The backups, I mean, holy cow, right? I mean, this is going to be an entire, outside of Jack Driscoll, right, who's going to be a backup. We know his value is as a backup swing right guard, right tackle. All right. We know Tyler Steen is a 3rd-round pick, so he's making the team.
Oh yeah.
Hasn't looked great. You and I both know that. We've heard the same thing. He's got to come a higher way to really be relevant. But right now, he's on the team. So that's 7 right there. You mentioned either last podcast, watch out for, or maybe before that, watch out for Fred Johnson. He's a guy with experience and he's a natural left tackle. I've been hearing the same thing. I mean, it's clear as we understand it, Fred Johnson's going to wind up on this team because he's a backup left tackle naturally, and they don't have another guy who you can say is a natural backup left tackle, and that's an important spot.
I mean, he has experience. He is a veteran, more or less. He's been with the Steelers, Bengals, Bucks. He's sort of a young journeyman. He's long. He's over 6'7".
Yeah.
We saw him get work with the 2s in the last week and a half. But man, if you look at, you're right. Look, Driscoll's clearly the best backup. He's been a good story. He's on the funny of his rookie deal. The good backup guard, right tackle, get you out of a pinch for 3 or 4 games. Now, by reps in practice and by the game, Sua Pettis should make the team. It's not a lock, though.
Right. I agree with you. Not a lock. I think Josh Andrews, I'm not going to call him a lock, but they don't have a backup center. They don't have a guy who can snap the ball other than Juergens. But in the middle of a game, if Jason Kelce limps off, we know they don't want to move Juergens to center and then put a right. We know they don't want to, weaken 2. They just want to make one change. And so to me, that gives Josh Andrews a pretty good shot here. We've seen Brett Toth as a center. It's not a good thing. The snaps were not good. Andrews has been working with the second team before the ankle. I'm sure he's going to get another week or 2 here to really show he deserves to be on the 53. But again, could this be a situation where Andrew doesn't make it, but they do find somebody out there at cutdown day who they think has snapping experience and could be yeah, absolutely. But that I would just keep my eye on him and don't just dismiss Josh Andrews because he got here a week or 2 ago. He serves an important role right now.
The reason is because he knows the blocking scheme, which is different.
Yep.
They're kind of unique. The way that they deal with the hand users, as Trey Thomas has told us repeatedly for our shows, it's different than the catch technique is different. And he knows it. He obviously he was with the Eagles previously with Stoutland, so that's important.
Mm-hmm.
But man, their depth is not very good in the offensive line. That's look, their starting 22 is terrific for the most part, except for safety, which we'll get to. But man, their backup, their depth is not very good.
Yeah, and we should add, one reason is that a guy that they believed in at one point last year kept him on the 53. Josh Sills has, as we understand it, he has not had a good camp at all. I mean, people saw with their own eyes he didn't get much of a push, or he got pushed back on that safety in the preseason game, and that's not just the only bad moment for Josh Sills. Now, this, Adam, it might be a little, I don't want to say unfair. I mean, he joined the team in the middle of camp. I don't know how much workout. He wasn't with them in OTAs. He's clearly behind, but the Eagles can't factor that in and say, we can't, we'll accommodate there. They got to take the best 8 or 9 guys.
The crazy thing is, last year, remember, he did initially make the team, and then he obviously went to suspend the Richards list because of the field issue, but he was good enough to make it last year. So he also had a good camp. That was one of the guys that kind of slipped through the cracks for any of us who cover this team, but we haven't. I get it. He was out of football for a while. He didn't have an off season. They put him right to work because they had to make up for lost time. But he hasn't done it yet. Dennis Kelly, I don't know. I don't know. I know a tight source told me he wasn't sure physically could do it anymore.
I'm not getting great vibes either.
Yeah. So look, this is a little troubling. Can't play Driscoll at every position now. So.
No, you really can't. So it's looking like the starting 5: Fred Johnson, Tyler Steen, Jack Driscoll. So that gives you 8 right there. And then we'll just see. Again, what is he making the team as? I mean, he's not. If
backup left, he can do it. He did it in practice. I saw.
But if you keep Toth over Andrews, you're leaving yourself without a backup.
Well, no,
center.
He's a backup. He won't play center. He'll be a backup tackle or.
No, I know. I'm just saying for the roster spot, if you're keeping a 9th guy and it's Toth, not keeping Andrews, you don't have a backup center.
Yeah. I mean, Andrews, to me, I'd be very surprised if he didn't make it. And the good thing is the ankle was no problems. He practiced Saturday and Sunday. So it's a little shaky. We got to call it like it is. It looks shaky on paper. But the good thing is, though, there should be some good veterans on the street once teams cut them. I know they have to learn the blocking technique. You let the guy, if they bring anyone else in, you let them learn it in practice. Got to give them some time. But it definitely, on paper right now, looks a little shaky.
Yeah. All right. So let's transition to wide receiver and just spend a real quick minute on this because there's really, I mean, the top four are set. We know AJ Brown, we know Devontae Smith, we know Quez Watkins and Olamide Zaccheaus are your top four. The question is the fifth one. We've said that's often special teams, punt return, but clearly Britton Covey, who made it, he didn't make it last year. He wound up getting signed off the practice squad last year, right?
Correct.
You wonder if the Eagles are headed toward something that they did last year, which is sort of get away with not having a punt returner early. Didn't they use elevations on a couple of guys? Oh, well, they did on Covey. They elevated him 3 times first before they actually signed him to the 53, if I recall. They brought Greg Ward in later in the year because they thought they may have to elevate him.
You know what happened? He got hurt and he had injury settlement, so he had to wait. On your point, he had to wait.
Right.
But they didn't activate him till I think January.
Correct. So I'm just wondering if the fifth wide receiver for the Eagles is somebody who's A, not on the team yet, or B, sort of a piecemeal guy who's elevated from the practice squad week after week, and the Eagles try to get away with just 4. That seems a little low.
Could be Ward. Could be best veteran. So he doesn't go through waivers. Devin Allen, by the way, has worked as a punt returner lately, which is interesting because he's been a kickoff returner. I'm not suggesting he's going to make it, but what I would tell you though, he has been working with the twos for the last week as a receiver. I still think it's a long shot, but remember we said last year they want to develop him as a receiver. Well, here you go. Wish he would give up his offseason. I know he doesn't want to go because he's a track star.
Yeah,
shame because he's got such incredible straight line speed.
Yep.
I don't know. You tell me. Who else could be a punt returner here?
Well, again, that's why I sort of say we need to see around the league who's cut down. I mean, there's always punt returners that are.
Yeah, I'm just saying on the roster.
Oh, on the no, that's what shocks me. They have so many good skill position players. You know, they've used Devontae Smith as a punt returner in games a couple of times, but I don't think they want to get in that business permanently. Yeah, no, I don't know. I really don't know. Some people have said Boston Scott. Now, I know he's done it at times in his career, right?
Him in camp. The 10 practices I've been to, I've seen him on kickoffs. We've seen Rashad Penny kickoffs is what we expected.
6 times in his career, all with the Eagles in 2019. 6 times he returned.
That's the last time he did it.
Wow. Yeah.
He's not a bad kickoff returner.
No.
Sermon, by the way, could do kicks. But,
well, he's trying to. I wouldn't say he was a real adept at it, but they put him back there.
But yeah, it's a small issue. But the bottom line is the 5th receiver job. So, but Ngata, I know I had him on my not too early 53 back in May on it. He's pushing for it. See, he's a guy they could probably cut and sneak through. 100%. I don't see a problem.
Yeah. 100%. That's how it was put to us about Ngata and Tyree Cleveland. They've looked nice in camp with Cleveland before the injury, obviously, but what they really are wide receiver 5 or practice squad guy.
And this Johnny King is a jumbo size receiver out of SEMO, Southeast Missouri State. Remember, he had that great catch against Baltimore.
Yeah.
He's a big dude. He's over 6'4". And Deion Kane's finally back. He's come back the last 5 days from his injury.
Yeah.
But that guy, the 5th receiver, may not be here. He may be on another team right now. Who knows?
There you go. All right, let's move over to defense, Adam. And this defensive line situation, man, if what we're hearing is right.
It's fascinating, man. I'm telling you, they got such incredible depth at D tackle. So let's look at D tackle, right? The guys we know will be on the team, right? Cox, Davis, Carter. Williams are 4. Now, Ojomo's hurt. He was pushing. Katavi Street is pushing. Marlon Tuipulotu is a backup nose, definitely is pushing. And
That's
Williams
3 guys. Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of guys. I mean, you don't want to keep 6 or 7, but Street also has played in 34 front. He's played in 43. He's got positional versatility. He's a veteran. He's got some push. Greg Cosell told him he definitely has pass rush ability. This is a toughie. This is the deepest position on the team. And although I guess I'm sorry, running back. Well, running back and off.
Yeah.
I mean, defense, so.
What makes it 2 things make this very difficult, I think, for the Eagles, Adam. one, and you can correct me if you heard differently, but from what
Yeah.
we're hearing, these three guys at the end here, Street, Ajomo, and Tuipulotu, are all having good camps. That's what we've heard.
Yeah.
That they're all performing well. Tuipulotu especially, which is pretty interesting. You know, he hasn't done anything his first 2 years, but again, he is someone that they've felt can be a backup nose, plays the run well. You can move him around a little bit, 3, nose, 5, all that. And the thing is, unlike running backs and receivers, when you waive these guys on cutdown day, they're not automatic that you bring them back because teams are always looking for good defensive interior defensive line, just like defensive ends and tackles. So, I don't really. Could they keep 6 or 7?
I could see 6. Well, here's the thing. Williams, he's obviously going to play DN. He has, but he's going to line up more inside. He's a backup 3 technique.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, one of the things I saw in practice recently is they played Carter as a 0 technique.
Mm-hmm.
So, and which is, by the way, which is what we thought would happen with him. And like you could play. You're going to play him at the 3 to back up Cox. You're going to back him up to play with Davis. You're also going to play him with Davis, where he's the 3 technique next to Davis. You could play him also at end in a 4-man front, which I saw, by the way.
Mm.
He's Carter's
Right.
But you have, and then Williams could play inside or outside. Tuipulotu is a backup nose, but Greg Cosell did tell us that he had upside as a pass rusher. We did see that on tape. I remember Greg telling us that when we did that show with the post-draft show in 21. And then you got Moro Jomo, who's had a good camp. He's flashed.
Yeah.
And Street. So yeah, I can't see 7-6 yet. 7.
What if you considered Williams a defensive end because he can play? You mentioned he can play outside.
But he does both.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is you sort of count it as 6 D tackles, and then you throw Williams with, because you really don't have that many hand in the dirt D ends. It's just Williams, Sweat, and if you want to call Barnett and BG D ends instead of edges or outside linebackers, then that really is 4 guys. That's 10. That's 10 on your line, which is not an absurd number for the Eagles. The only thing that sort of then calls into question, and this is why I said maybe 3 off the ball linebackers instead of 4, is that you've got your edge rushing linebackers, which are going to be Reddick, Nolan Smith, and probably
BG. I mean,
I counted BG as a D end.
I'm sorry, I meant edge. Oh, so the way you're off the balls are going to be. Well, no, Nolan would be an
outside linebacker, a strong side linebacker is what I'm talking
edge
about.
rusher.
Or an overhang. Let's call them overhangs.
He's an edge rusher.
Yeah, edge rusher. Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith, and so there's a battle right now.
Barnett, you're calling an edge, right?
Well, I'm calling Barnett a D end. I put it. Well, all right. Well, if you want to call him an edge, then you take him out of D end, and that still just gives you 9 combination of DN DT. So you could
Graham's line up at end, and he lines up he plays with hand down. He stands up.
Yeah.
So does Sweaty.
So the point is with total rushers, tackles, ends, and edges, if you kept the 6 DTs or 7 with Williams, kind of fudging it between DT, DE, and kept maybe 4 quote unquote overhangs, that's 14 guys. You might be able to get that. That's tough. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't surprise me if Howie made a move here. If he felt that somebody had some trade value and he can get something, he makes a move. I don't know who that would be. Obviously, it's not going to be, your marquee guys, but maybe there's some kind of 5th or 6th you can get for someone. I don't know. We'll see. But it is a conundrum for them. And obviously, it's a good conundrum though, because these are all guys they like how they're performing. That's the key. They like how these guys are performing.
Yeah, and they're a multiple front team.
Yep.
So 3-4-4-3. They'll still play some of that 5-man front. Although they haven't started games like that, I'm sure they'll still do that.
Yep.
But it's a good problem to have. They have unbelievable depth at D tackle. Like look, they've always been good on the lines. This is why. Other than the couple of drafts they've had, which were pretty bad, but when they've gotten it right, they've done so well drafting and developing, signing the right free agents on the defensive line. When you're good on the lines, you're giving yourself a chance, and they're certainly really good on the line.
Absolutely. So the one real, I guess, battle, like guy versus guy here in camp, you can talk about is that backup, that last edge or outside edge rusher spot between Janaris Robinson and Patrick Johnson. Now Janaris had some good plays in that preseason game.
He had
He had a hit.
he had a
Yeah,
great, in fact, both games he had a couple quality rushes.
right.
Good,
And
good.
yeah, Patrick Johnson just got back to practice from the ankle injury a couple days ago. Now, here's a case where special teams might be the winning factor. What we're told on Janaris Robinson is that shows really good power, a little bit stiff as an edge rusher, and maybe that's why the Vikings gave up on him quickly. Doesn't have great natural bend or explosion around the edge, but he has good power and good speed to power. You saw that in the preseason game, but they have always liked Patrick Johnson. Patrick Johnson has actually played as a backup edge rusher in games for the Eagles last year, and he's been a special teams contributor. So I would say right now, Patrick Johnson probably has the lead in that advantage.
He wouldn't be because it's the second year. It's already in play specials. He was doing very well, by the way.
Third year, actually.
Seen him for the injury.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say that. Janoris Robinson, though, man, he's way bigger physically than Patrick Johnson. He's a big dude.
Yeah, you wonder if they can get some good tape on him against the Colts, and then maybe somebody else, wants to offer them something for him.
Additional stuff.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's move to inside linebacker, quarterback, safety, the back end of the defense. First, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with all their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's also pause to hear a word from Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You will get a great deal. Be very fascinating to see this year who drives the Sky Motor Cars vehicles. We know a lot of Eagles have taken that advantage of that in the past.
Sixers. I didn't see Paul Reed there.
Oh, there you go. B-ball Paul. Nice.
A lot of NFL players, not just Eagles. We know that Marcus Peters now with the Raiders. They actually delivered this car when he was in Baltimore.
Yep.
They're the best. The reviews are incredible. SkyMotorCars.com. You could see their cars. They have them on their website and they ship across the country. Pretty cool. And they're the best.
All right. Linebacker, Adam. Inside linebacker, we already touched on the four that we're pretty confident in here. The question is maybe the roles. Cunningham is definitely against the run, goal line, short yardage. But when you're in pass defense and you're in a natural nickel with two off-ball linebackers, Nakobe Dean's one. Who's the other? Is it Christian Ellis? Is it Nick Morrow?
Morrow, probably.
Yeah, probably more. Although I every time I think that, I get some pretty good feedback on Christian Ellis, who is having a good camp. But I do think that they would rather have a veteran presence in there as of now. And then maybe if they don't feel like they're getting what they want week 4, week 5, maybe that's the history of them, right? They start off with one, and then if it doesn't work out, then they kind of juggle and put a different guy in. We've seen that throughout the past.
So yeah, we know their base when they play their first and second down guys will be Dean and Cunningham, nickel. We'll see how they do this. We'll see how they do this when it's funny because it looks like a nickel is their base because they never play 3 linebackers. Because Reddick's an edge rusher. I know technically he's a linebacker, strong side. He's an edge rusher.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And then will they do dime here? Because we know Gannon wasn't big on that. The single linebacker should be Dean. I'll tell you what, he's instinctive. I've been wanting to talk about this for a couple weeks now. Boy, he's had a couple picks. He knows where to go. He deflects the ball. You see why scouting people around the National Football League were so high on him.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Small frame. You're worried about that. That's why he got knocked into the run. I've asked a bunch of teams in my training camp where they all said the same thing. Kind of worried about his size.
Mm-hmm.
As you detailed for us after the draft, wasn't just a pectoral injury, which limited him in the offseason last year. It was a bunch of 3 or 4 minor injuries, which you're worried about, small frame. So that's it. That's but he's a very talented guy. We're really looking forward to seeing him play this season.
Adam, one thing that should really help him based on, what we heard about everything you just said about his frame, it's not how he plays the game, is that the switch from not having Javon Hargrave as a 3 technique to having Jalen Carter, or even if it's Contavious Street or Tui Pelotu, right? Whoever's in there, is that in order for Nakobe Dean to really function as the way they want him to and the way he's built to, he has to be kept clean, right? This is not a guy who's just going to take on a 320-pound guard, knock him to the side, and then make the tackle like Jeremiah Trotter would do, right? He really needs to be kept clean. And I think, in fairness, it would have been tough, like if Hargrave were there to really know if he could have done that. Edwards did a really good job. He was always in the right place, always in the right time, got himself in a position where he can make tackles. But even there were sometimes games where we saw that they struggled in run defense and the linebackers weren't kept clean. So they just need to be clean.
Right. He was a smaller guy that would build up his body. He got, I think you outlined this for us a year ago or two. He started to get not that he's fast, but he worked on his drops. He was better in coverage. He wasn't ideally what you wanted as a nickel linebacker, but he got better. He wasn't the liability he once was. But Dean is just a phenomenal talent. It's just got to get over the frame that you mentioned. Got to 100% the best point of all. You got to clean him up. You got to keep him clean, because one of the things that bother people in the league about Hargrave, the tape showed it. Whether he was on a contract drive or not, the tape showed that his technique was poor against the run. He's kind of doing his own thing. You can't have that. You're not going to pay this guy. Now, the Niners did. They paid him $20 million a year over his first 2. They're paying him. They're by contract. They can't get out if they got to pay him $40 million over the first.
They
2.
do have bigger linebackers, guys like Warner and Trey Greenlaw. They can get away.
I get
with
it. Yeah, I get it. But that doesn't make an excuse for him to give up on the run like he did. That's inexcusable.
100%.
So I don't blame the Eagles for walking away.
All right. So we'll move on to corner now. So this is sort of the fascinating conversation that we've been having as far as numbers, right? The Eagles kept 5 corners last year. 6 is a absurdly big number of cornerbacks to keep, but they've already got 4 locks.
Yep.
With Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, and Ringo, and really Josh Jobe. So that's 5 locks.
5. Yep.
When Zach McPherson got hurt, everybody said, "Oh, he was going to make it. He's the backup slot. I can't believe this is really tough," and it is. And I believe he would have made it as the backup slot. But tell me then how all those other guys make it, and McPherson was going to make it. They were going to keep 6. I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, their plan for McPherson is what we saw for 2 weeks. So the way to explain to me was this on first through 4th round picks. The first 2 rounds are obvious. They have to start this in their draft. Eventually, 3rd or 4th rounders, to justify the pick, must play the position they were drafted for. They can't just be special teams players. That's not why you draft someone in the 3rd round. It doesn't work that way. So eventually, Zach McPherson had to play corner. Okay, what did the Eagles do? They finally cross-trained him at outside corner. They moved Bradbury inside. This is interesting, and they still could do it with Bradbury, by the way.
Yes.
But they finally cross-trained him at it. You got to justify the pick. You got to see if he can do it. He wasn't just going to be a backup slot. They started cross-training, and unfortunately towards Achilles, so that's out the door. So the question now would be, with the 5 spots taken, then we turn this back to you. Do they keep Mario Goodrich now as the backup slot, which he's been doing the last couple of weeks? Do they keep Garner or Rick?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I wrote about this the other day on InsideTheBirds.com. It started a I was already thinking about this. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before the McPherson injury, but you just mentioned it. There had to be a reason that they were starting to play James Bradbury in the slot. Has to be a reason they were doing that. Why are they all of a sudden cross-training him in the slot? Is it because they were not going to keep McPherson, but they felt like with Jobe on the outside, maybe 20, 30%. I'm going through what was in my head.
Yeah, good.
Was it that?
Let's get open up that cranium. Go ahead.
Or were they really going to keep 6, but still knowing that Ringo's not going to play? He's going to be there, not going to play. Play Jobe on the outside, move. Or is there something going on with Maddox, who's been hurt a lot? It's struck. I know everybody's going to say, like, what do you call it? They're not going to get rid of Maddox. It's a big cap hit. 2 years ago, you and I both know this. There were some questions about Isaac Seumalo and his ability to see that contract because he had been hurt so much. They had drafted Landon Dickerson, right? And Landon Dickerson wound up playing, but only because the other guy, Brandon Brooks, got hurt. But they still had Brooks at the time. They draft Dickerson. So they've got Sam. There were some questions about whether Seumalo was going to see the end of the contract because of the injuries, and I'm just using that as context to say it's interesting that they have Avonte Maddox. He's been hurt a lot. They were using Zach McPherson finally for the right time in the slot, and also now auditioning or cross training James Bradbury there. And you don't normally keep 6 corners. I'm just saying all that made me think that something had to give somewhere, and I don't know what it was.
Well, they had to start getting McPherson at corner. We know the 2 starters, not the Wood, they've been healthy. Slade's been amazingly durable.
But haven't they also continued this even with McPherson? You were at the last practice. Wasn't Bradbury still playing corner?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, Joe was on the
nickel
outside.
Corner. Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating, man. And we talked about this on our contract show a couple months ago. Maddox's cap number goes from just over $4 million this season, which makes him obviously keepable, to over $10 million next year. So this could be his last year. I mean, it's not a talent issue. He's been hurt a lot.
It is.
So yeah, I hear you.
It's a thing that makes you go,
It's clear you're going conspiracy here.
Not conspiracy. I mean, I just
know what I mean. You're like, there's got to be
outside the box, right?
Well
outside
said.
the box.
I get it. I get the vibe. I get where you're going here. But Mario Goodrich again got some work as a backup slot. So
yeah, to me, I think it's going to be a decision between Goodrich and Ricks. Not that I've heard Ricks has played great, but we'll see. I know what this guy was supposed to be. He has some real athletic gifts and talents. And when you're talking about that last spot, you don't want somebody to claim it. I don't know. I know he didn't look very good in the game, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Could be neither of them. It really could. I mean,
sure. I mean, they could keep 5.
Yeah.
I mean, Ringo, I don't know that Ringo will address it at all. Really, he doesn't look like he's ready.
Right.
But Job's clearly the top outside backup corner. Now, what I don't know is he backing up both. We need to look into this.
That's a good question. I would think you'd have to, but yeah.
Yeah, is he more comfortable right side or left side? We'll look at that.
Right.
But and then safety. Let's go to safety. They're only keeping 4. Right now would be Blankenship obviously starting. He's been great. Edmonds right now I put it in pencil that he starts for the early portion of the season. Justin Evans has got a lot of work with the 2s over Wallace lately. He looks like he's over Wallace, and of course Sidney Brown, who's every once in a while gets a rep with the 1s, but he's mostly gotten work with the 2s and 3s. Let me throw this at you. I threw this out to some of the writers who reported the practice. What week, if you had to make a prediction, what does he get? Does Brown start next to Blankenship by week 3, week 5, or week 7? Games whenever.
It's a great question. Listen, it may take longer than that. To me, it's not about who starts, but who's playing the most snaps, right? And if the Eagles are doing great against the Patriots and stopping the run, and they're in nickel or dime for a lot, then Sidney Brown might see more time than Terrell Edmonds, just because they're in a more of a pass defense.
I see what you mean, right?
Or they could it could be like very close all 3 because they're playing a big nickel with 3 safeties. So I think Sidney Brown's going to be on the field.
So you mean situationally depending on what the game plan is that week? Because Brown right now, we know he's a knife against the run. We know that. That's what he was at Illinois.
Yep.
Now it's more comfortability with him. You're just going to have to take your lumps because he's playing differently than he was in college now. So it's just going to be different, but he's going to be a player. He's a force, not only against the run, he can hit, he can tackle. It's just coverage wise, it's just going to take him a while.
Yeah. Now, preseason game 1, Kevon Wallace is a starter, and people are like, oh, maybe the lights come. All right, Kevon Wallace. Now, preseason game 2, the guy's playing deep into the 4th quarter.
Right.
So it's a weird dynamic. If Brown, Edwards, and Blankenship are 3 of your 4, and you need a 4, obviously the 4 is going to come down to special teams. So then it becomes between Wallace and the kid Evans. Well, I don't know, he's not a kid, but Evans, I tend to think Evans, as you just mentioned, who's starting to rise up a little bit, would get that preference because he's a great athlete, right? I mean, that was he had great athletic traits.
Now.
Well, yeah, that's true. He had great athletic traits before missing 3 straight years. And if he's even close to that, that would be good on special teams.
Oh,
And if not,
right.
then maybe it'll be Kevon Wallace sticking around for that. But
Well-
I don't think Kevon Wallace is not going to be starting.
no. But Evans has been over Wallace in practice lately.
Mm-hmm.
So I would put Evans over Wallace when we do our 53. You being Andrew for next Monday's show, I would probably have Evans over Wallace. See Evans. Remember, this guy was a second round pick.
Yeah,
but Wallace was really overdrafted, even as a fourth rounder.
right.
Evans has got more talent, as you said. Now you just wonder. Now we need to take a little deeper look at how these look, but.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it. Look, they still have a lot of questions, but as you said earlier, the fine focus is coming in. We're starting to get a better picture of what they're not the question mark. We had 80 questions today. Start training camp. Now we're down to about 10.
Yeah.
But they're still important questions.
All right. Next podcast, we'll be reviewing the joint practice and previewing the game and giving you even more intel on what's happening with your Philadelphia Eagles. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us. Inside the Birds.